He kissed her. Right there. In the hallway. Under the sconce light. Beside the coat rack. Just 10 feet from the ballroom where everyone was still clinking glasses and praising the shrimp cocktail. He kissed her like he owned her. Like they had kissed 100 times before. And she let him. I didn't blink. I couldn't. My eyes were cemented open. My hand frozen mid-reach with a paper napkin I'd grabbed to wipe sauce off my tie. A meaningless detail I now can't stop replaying, the damn napkin, dangling stupidly in my hand while my life was quietly detonating behind a fake ficus tree. I don't know how long I stood there. 5 seconds? 10? Long enough to memorize the way her fingers curled around the lapel of his suit jacket. Long enough to hear her soft laugh as she pulled away. Long enough to know it wasn't a mistake. Then I stepped forward. My voice came out quieter than I expected. You just destroyed our marriage. She turned. She didn't gasp. She didn't cry. She didn't plead. She just stared at me, with eyes I didn't recognize, and said, "You're mistaken." 2 words. That's all. And suddenly I was the problem. The confused one. The outsider in my own story. The man beside her had the nerve to look uncomfortable, but not guilty. Like I'd walked in on a conversation that wasn't meant for me. Like I was inconveniencing them. I walked out before I could collapse. My legs somehow carried me through the exit, down the hotel's marble steps, and into the freezing December air. I don't remember driving home. I don't remember parking. But I remember unlocking the door to our apartment and wondering, is this still mine? She hasn't come home yet. Her toothbrush is still in the holder. Her earrings are on the tray beside the sink. There's an open bottle of wine on the counter with 2 glasses poured. One of them is still full. I sat down on the edge of the bed 3 hours ago. I haven't moved since. What does she mean? You're mistaken. Mistaken about what? Because I saw everything. And if I didn't, then I have no idea what's real anymore. I didn't sleep. I didn't even try. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw his hand on her waist and her eyes flickering shut like it was familiar. Like comfort. Like routine. Not panic. Not accident. Definitely not surprise. But now it's morning. Early. The kind of early where the sky's still gray and the world feels half-invented. I'm sitting at the kitchen table staring at the untouched glass of wine she poured for me last night. It's warm now, the way wine isn't supposed to be, a small, stupid metaphor for whatever this is. This mess. This silence. This disbelief that's quietly ballooning inside my chest and pressing against everything I thought I knew. She still hasn't come back. Her coat isn't on the rack. Her car isn't in the lot. Her phone went straight to voicemail around 2:15 a.m. after I'd worked up the nerve to call her again. Not that I expected her to answer. I don't even know what I would have said. Hi. I'm just wondering if you're still kissing strangers at company events or if you've moved on to the next surprise. Around 5:30, I finally stood up. My legs ached. I hadn't realized I'd been clutching my phone the whole time. I went to the bathroom, washed my face with cold water, and looked in the mirror. I didn't like who looked back. Not just because I looked like held bags under my eyes, shirt wrinkled and untucked, but because there was something else. Something worse. I looked like a man who didn't believe his own eyes anymore. By 6 o'clock, I was back in the car. Not because I had anywhere to be, I just couldn't sit in that apartment any longer. Not with the air filled with unanswered questions and the ghost of her perfume clinging to the cushions. I drove aimlessly through the neighborhood, then downtown, and then, without really deciding to, I pulled into the lot next to her office building. It was empty. Of course it was. The whole floor was dark except for one emergency light buzzing faintly in the stairwell. I sat there for 15 minutes, maybe more, debating whether to go in. Not to confront her. I didn't even know if she was there. But to prove to myself that something still made sense. That she had a desk. That her world was still real. I didn't go in. I ended up driving to the nearest diner, ordering pancakes I didn't touch, and staring at the couple in the booth across from me. They were laughing. His hand was resting casually over hers on the table, her thumb tracing lazy circles on his knuckle. And for the first time since last night, I felt something stronger than confusion. I felt embarrassed. Embarrassed that I was sitting there alone, wondering what had gone wrong, while the rest of the world just kept turning. Embarrassed that my wife might be somewhere else right now, telling someone a different version of the story. One where I'm the villain, the fool, the man who jumped to conclusions over a harmless moment. One where she's the victim and I'm the one who misunderstood. But that's not what happened. I saw it, didn't I? The more I thought about her words, "You're mistaken," the more they dug into my brain like splinters. Was it just manipulation? Denial? Or was there something else happening that I wasn't seeing? I picked up my phone and typed her name into Google. Not because I thought she'd be in the news or anything, I don't know. I needed to look at her like a stranger might. Like a detective. Like someone trying to piece together a puzzle with only one corner filled in. But something unexpected came up. It was an article. From 3 years ago. Rising star at How Well Designed. Tessa Rainier named client director. I clicked it out of instinct. There was a photo. Tessa, smiling. Standing next to the same man from last night. The one who kissed her. Only back then, the caption read, Tessa Rainier and How Well investor Michael Lewis at company gala. Investor? Investor. Not coworker. Not friend. Investor. And suddenly, I wasn't sure what game I was in or how long it had been going on. I stared at the article for a long time. Not reading. Just staring. Her face. His face. Her hand slightly behind his back, almost touching but not quite. That frozen moment from 3 years ago, back when she told me the gala was boring and just some awkward networking and cheese plates. But now I had evidence, real, digital, time-stamped evidence, that she had lied. Maybe not outright, but through omission, through softness, through choosing what not to tell me. That's when I realized something else. In the photo, Tessa is wearing the same bracelet she had on last night. A thin gold chain with a tiny teardrop charm. I bought it for her 5 years ago for our anniversary, but she rarely wore it, said it caught on her sweaters. But she wore it to that gala. And she wore it last night. I don't believe in signs. I'm not that guy. I don't think every moment has a hidden message behind it. But this felt like a crack in a timeline, like I discovered a second version of our life playing out in the shadows, just beneath the surface of what I thought we had. The version where she laughs at another man's jokes, wears the bracelet when I'm not around, and kisses someone who isn't me beside a coat rack like it means nothing. By the time I pulled back into our apartment complex, my hands were shaking so badly I dropped my keys twice trying to unlock the door. I stepped inside and was hit with the familiar scent of cinnamon and jasmine, her favorite candle still burning gently on the windowsill, like a domestic hallucination. A lie dressed in cozy lighting. And then I heard it, the sound of water running. She was home. I moved toward the bathroom slowly, unsure of what I was even going to say. Confront her? Scream? Cry? I didn't know what would come out. But before I could do any of that, I heard her voice. She was humming. She was humming. After everything, after disappearing, ignoring my calls, kissing someone else, she was in there like nothing happened, humming some soft, shapeless melody over the splash of warm water. Like it was just another Wednesday morning. Like she didn't blow up the foundation of our lives 12 hours ago. When she emerged minutes later wrapped in a towel, she froze. We locked eyes. I don't know what she expected. Me to be gone? Still asleep? Sitting on the bed clutching a throw pillow and a bottle of whiskey? I didn't give her time to guess. I asked calmly, somehow, who was Michael Lewis? Her eyes flickered, just for a second. But it was enough. I saw the photo, I continued, from the How Well Gala. You were with him. Same man from last night. Same bracelet. Same lie. She didn't deny it. Instead, she looked down, walked to the bedroom dresser, and pulled out a pair of jeans and a hoodie like we were having a conversation about groceries. Tessa, I said, louder now. Look at me. Who is he? She sat down on the edge of the bed and took a deep breath. He's an investor. That's all. No, that's not all. You kissed him. She didn't speak. I saw it. I stood there. You were holding him. Still nothing. You said I was mistaken, I whispered, softer now. But I'm not. Am I? She finally looked at me, and the sadness in her eyes was unlike anything I'd ever seen on her face before. Not guilt. Not shame. Just this hollow ache, like something inside her had been broken long before I noticed. You don't understand, she said quietly. There are things I didn't tell you, things I couldn't tell you. But it's not what you think. I wanted to scream. Instead, I sat on the floor beside the bed, my back pressed against the dresser. Then tell me, I whispered. Tell me what it is. And she did. But the first thing out of her mouth shattered everything even more. She said, he's not just an investor. He's the reason we were able to pay off your medical bills 2 years ago. I blinked. What are you talking about? She didn't move. When your insurance denied coverage and we had no savings left, I went to Denise. She introduced me to Michael. He covered the costs. Quietly. No strings, at first. At first. She swallowed. It got complicated. I felt the floor drop out from beneath me. Everything I thought I knew about our struggles, the long nights, the tight grocery budgets, the payment plans, suddenly rewrote themselves in real time, replaced by the image of a stranger's money greasing the wheels of our survival. But why didn't you tell me? I asked, my voice cracking. Why wouldn't you tell me something like that? And she said, because I knew it would break you. I didn't respond. I couldn't. Because deep down, she might have been right. The silence that followed her confession wasn't the kind that settles in naturally, it was the kind that smothers. The kind that feels like pressure against your ribs, like gravity has decided to triple itself just on you. I didn't say a word. I couldn't. My mind was stuck somewhere between outrage and confusion, trying to compute how someone could keep a secret like that for 2 whole years and pretend like everything was fine. I should have asked more questions back then. About how the hospital debt disappeared. About why the bills stopped coming. But I was too relieved to notice. Too busy trying to heal, trying to get back to normal. I thought it was luck. Or maybe a clerical error. Or maybe, foolishly, I thought Tessa had worked something out through the company. What I didn't expect was that she had turned to some charismatic investor with deep pockets and vague motives. What do you mean it complicated? I finally asked, and the words sounded childish in my throat. As if that single word could unpack the mess she'd so carefully hidden from me. She didn't answer right away. Instead, she stood, walked over to the nightstand, and opened the drawer slowly, like she was reaching into a vault that hadn't been opened in years. She pulled out a letter. It was folded twice and sealed with a gold sticker. She didn't hand it to me. She just stared at it in her palm like it weighed more than it should. I never sent it, she said, her voice distant. I wrote this the night I agreed to meet him alone, the first night, I mean. Not the work dinners. Not the galas. Just the 2 of us. I was scared. I didn't know if I was doing the right thing. But I thought you deserved honesty, even if it hurt. Then why didn't you send it? She looked up, tears filling her eyes. Because I thought I could manage it. I thought I could keep it separate. You, us, what we had. I didn't want it to get poisoned by desperation. I finally took the letter from her and sat back down, holding it like it might explode. I didn't open it. Not yet. I couldn't. I was afraid of what was inside, afraid that the words written in her hand would somehow sound more final than hearing her say it out loud. I need to know what happened, I said. Not hints. Not pieces. All of it. She sat across from me, her legs crossed tightly, her hands clenched in her lap like she was bracing for impact. He offered to help, she began. And I said no. At first. I told him we'd figure it out, that we weren't looking for charity. But he was persistent. He made it sound like it was no big deal, like it was just a favor to a colleague's wife. Denise vouched for him. She said he was discreet, generous, unattached. But it didn't stay unattached, I muttered. She nodded. He kept showing up. Lunches. Small gifts. Notes. Compliments. Nothing I could point to, really. Nothing obvious. But I felt it, the shift. The way he looked at me. The way he started talking about how people like us shouldn't have to live paycheck to paycheck. He made me feel like I owed him. Did you? She didn't look away. Emotionally? Yes. Romantically? I don't know. Maybe in his mind. But I never meant to give him that impression. You kissed him, Tessa. I know, she whispered, and for the first time, her voice broke. That night, last night, it wasn't planned. I was trying to keep things normal. Just one more company event. One more round of smiles. But he cornered me in the hallway and said something that made my blood run cold. What? He said, you should really consider leaving him. You deserve more than a man who can't even see what he owes you. I clenched my jaw. I told him to stop, she continued. I told him he didn't understand anything about us. But he laughed. And then he leaned in. It wasn't long. But I didn't stop him. I froze. And that's when you saw it. Why did you say I was mistaken? Because you were. Not about the kiss. But about what it meant. You looked at me like I was in love with him. Like I'd chosen him. But that's not what happened, Cal. That moment, it wasn't desire. It was collapse. I didn't know how to stop it without making a scene. I didn't know how to untangle myself from the very thing I'd allowed to grow. I stood and walked to the kitchen. I needed space. I needed oxygen. I opened the window above the sink and let the cold air hit my face. Below, I could see the street. A jogger. A delivery van. Normal life moving on without pause. While upstairs, I was beginning to realize that my marriage hadn't been mine for a very long time. Tessa, I said, without turning around. Did anything else happen? Anything you haven't told me? She was quiet for so long I thought she hadn't heard me. Then she said the one word I was dreading. Yes. I turned. Her face was pale, her hands trembling. What else? She hesitated. Then she said, I didn't want to accept more money from him. But I did. Last year. For your rehab. I told you it was covered by an old claim, but it wasn't. My stomach twisted. And in exchange, she said, he asked me to spend a weekend with him. No strings, no expectations. That's what he said. But we both knew what it implied. And did you? She looked down. I went. That was all. She didn't say what happened. She didn't have to. Because sometimes, silence says more than words ever could. I don't know how long I stood there after she said it. I remember gripping the edge of the kitchen sink, knuckles white, nails biting into the metal like I could anchor myself there. Like if I held on hard enough, I wouldn't slide into whatever hell had just opened under my feet. Her words weren't violent, but they hit like a slow-motion car crash. Not loud, just shattering. She went. He paid. And whatever no expectations meant in her mind, I already knew what it meant in his. I wanted to scream, to break something, to break everything. But instead, I just breathed. In, out, in again. My breath sounded loud in the room, louder than the refrigerator humming, louder than the wind scratching at the window pane. I couldn't look at her, not because I hated her, but because I didn't know what face to put on anymore. The husband? The victim? The fool? They all felt like costumes I'd worn too long. Finally, I asked the question I never thought I'd ask in my marriage. Why didn't you just tell me? And she said something that was almost too honest. Because I thought it would destroy you. And I didn't want to be the one who broke you. But you were, I replied. You are. She nodded, slowly, like she'd rehearsed that moment in her mind 1,000 times. But the real thing still stung. I walked to the living room and sat on the floor. I couldn't bring myself to sit on the couch where we used to eat takeout and binge shows and pretend we had time to kill. That couch was holy in a way I couldn't explain. Sitting there would have felt like bringing blood into a church. She followed, standing in the doorway, arms crossed over her chest. She looked small, and I hated that. I hated that part of me still wanted to comfort her. That part of me still thought of her as mine, when clearly I'd been something to borrow. A place to rest. A version of stability she could retreat to between other people's hands. So what now? She asked, voice quiet. I shook my head. I don't know. I honestly don't know. Because the truth was, there were too many versions of Tessa now. The one from the bookstore who smiled with eyes full of curiosity. The one who held my hand through 4 drips and late-night hospital waits. The one who cooked soup when I was too weak to walk. And now, this version. The one who whispered to powerful men in hotel rooms while I stayed home budgeting coupons and praying we'd make it another month. I got up, grabbed my coat, and walked out. I needed air. I needed space. I needed to see if the world still made sense. I didn't tell her where I was going. I didn't look back. I ended up at the park near 12th and Main. The same one we used to walk through on Sunday mornings with coffee in hand and no plans for the day. I sat on a bench that overlooked the small pond where ducks always gathered, and I watched them float as if they didn't have a care in the world. That's when my phone buzzed. A message from a number I didn't recognize. Meet me, please. I need to explain my side. ML. My heart froze. Michael Lewis. He had my number. Of course he did. Men like him always have a way of getting what they want. I stared at the message, the words pulsing like a live wire. Explain his side. What side? The side where he played savior while buying weekends with my wife? The side where he knew exactly what kind of pain he was feeding and kept feeding it anyway. But then another part of me, the part that hadn't yet given up on truth, no matter how ugly, thought, maybe hearing it would help. Maybe hearing the monster speak out loud would kill the fantasy once and for all. Or maybe it would break me completely. I texted back, where? He responded immediately, the old lakeside grill. Back patio. 9 p.m. Come alone. I didn't reply. I didn't have to. Because deep down, I already knew I was going. I had to know what kind of man thought it was okay to purchase proximity to my wife under the mask of generosity. I had to know if Tessa's guilt was hers alone, or if this man had carved it into her piece by piece, the way predators do with soft-hearted people who are too loyal for their own good. When I returned home around 7, Tessa was asleep on the couch. Curled up, hoodie pulled over her head, blanket half fallen to the floor. Her phone was still in her hand. A missed call from Denise flashed on the screen. I stared at her for a long time. I wanted to wake her. I wanted to shake her and demand more answers. But I didn't. Because for the first time, I wasn't sure if I deserved them, or if I'd just been chasing an illusion for years. At 8:30, I left again. I didn't say a word. I just walked out into the cold, toward the patio of a restaurant long shut down, to hear the side of the story no husband should ever have to listen to. The Lakeside Grill had been closed for at least a year, maybe more. I remembered reading something about a fire in the kitchen, minor, no injuries, but enough to shut the place down for good. Yet here I was, pulling into the gravel lot behind the restaurant, headlights bouncing off the rotting for sale sign staked beside the cracked dumpster. The place looked forgotten by time. I almost turned around. Almost. But there, in the back, where the patio used to host jazz nights and overpriced brunches, a single bulb hung from the awning, casting a weak yellow cone of light over a table and two metal chairs. And in one of those chairs sat the man who had kissed my wife, and maybe, just maybe, done much worse. Michael Lewis. He was dressed casually, in a way that screamed intentional comfort. Designer sneakers, pressed jeans, a black quarter zip that probably cost more than our mortgage payment. He had that slick stillness about him, like nothing could surprise him anymore. He didn't stand up when I approached. He just nodded and gestured to the empty chair across from him. "You came," he said, like we were old friends meeting for coffee. "I shouldn't have," I replied, sitting anyway. A beat of silence stretched between us. The air smelled like wet concrete and burnt wood. Somewhere in the distance, a dog barked once, then stopped. Michael studied me for a moment, then leaned back and clasped his hands behind his head. "You want to hit me?" "I want answers," I said, jaw tight. "And maybe a broken nose." He smirked. "Fair." I waited. I wasn't going to give him anything. No reactions. No righteousness. I wanted him to talk, to hang himself with his own words. "You think I'm some cartoon villain," he began, his voice low and calm. "That I swept in with money and charm and ruined your wife. But that's not what happened." I stared at him. "Enlighten me." He sighed, then looked past me into the dark, like he was watching ghosts dance around the parking lot. "She came to me," he said. "Not for the first hospital bill. Denise brought her for that. But after the first time she felt what it was like not to drown in money. That's when she came back." I shook my head. "No. She told me you pushed her. Pressured her." He nodded. "I did. In the beginning. I tested boundaries. I made suggestions. But she's smarter than that. Stronger than that. She said no. Every time. Until one day she didn't. That's when I realized it wasn't about me at all. It was about you." My throat tightened. "What the hell are you talking about?" He leaned forward. "She never resented you for getting sick. But she resented the life it forced her to live. The sacrifices. The constant anxiety. The smile she had to wear around you, even when she was screaming inside. I didn't create the crack in your marriage, Calvin. I just saw the one that was already there." "That's not true," I said, but the words came out softer than I meant them. He pulled something from his jacket, a folded napkin, like the kind they used to use here when the place was still in business. He slid it across the table to me. I unfolded it with hesitation. Written in Tess's handwriting, unmistakable and fluid, were two lines. "Tell me it's okay to want something else. Just for a little while. Just until I can breathe again." I stared at the words. The ink faded but sharp. My stomach churned. "When did she write this?" I asked. He shrugged. "The second night we met. She never gave it to me. Left it on the table when she went to the restroom. I kept it. Thought maybe one day she'd want it back. This doesn't prove anything." "No," he said, "but it proves something. And you already know what it is." I wanted to throw the napkin. Set it on fire. Pretend it wasn't real. But part of me, the broken part, the raw, bleeding part, recognized those words. They sounded like the version of her I'd missed without realizing. The one who woke up early to manage our finances in silence. The one who stopped buying anything for herself. The one who never once complained while I spiraled through treatments and guilt and more doctor's appointments than any young couple should ever have to manage. She never said she was drowning. But maybe she didn't know how. "She doesn't love you," I muttered. "I know," he replied. "She never did. That's what made it so easy for her to leave." "She didn't leave," I snapped. He tilted his head. "Has she really been with you these past 2 years? Or has she just been orbiting you, pretending the center of her world didn't shift?" I stood. He didn't move. Just leaned back again, like he'd done what he came to do. As I turned to walk away, he called after me. "You don't have to be angry at her, Calvin. You can just let go. Sometimes people outgrow each other. And sometimes they lie about it until it explodes." I kept walking. I didn't stop until I reached my car. I sat behind the wheel for 20 minutes, the napkin still in my hand. I didn't know whether to scream, cry, or laugh. Because in that moment, I realized something horrifying. I had spent so long trying to be enough for her, to fix, to protect, to keep us afloat, that I never stopped to ask if she even wanted to stay afloat with me. And now? Now I wasn't sure if the woman I loved had ever truly existed at all. The drive home felt like driving through fog, even though the roads were clear. I remember watching the yellow lines whip beneath me like I was moving on rails, guided by something more automatic than conscious thought. The napkin sat on the passenger seat, its folds now permanently creased, the ink of her words faintly glimmering under the dome light. I'd read them again at every red light. I don't know why. Maybe part of me hoped the words would change the next time I looked. But they didn't. They never do. When I finally pulled into the lot, the apartment windows were dark. No movement. No shadows behind the curtains. For a second, I thought maybe she had left, taken her things, and disappeared without another word. I didn't know if that would have relieved me or broken me further. But when I opened the door, the air was warm. Too warm. She had turned the heat up, which she only did when she was anxious. It was a tiny habit I'd forgotten until just then. And there she was, curled on the couch, wrapped in her blanket, her eyes open but unfocused, like she was staring into a future she couldn't quite recognize. She didn't flinch when I stepped in, didn't look surprised. I think she knew I'd gone to meet him. I think she'd been counting down the minutes, maybe even praying I wouldn't come back at all. I sat down on the armchair across from her, not saying anything. I waited. I needed her to speak first. I needed her to be the one to start unraveling whatever remained. But she didn't. She just said softly, "I thought maybe you wouldn't come back." "I didn't want to," I answered. But I had nowhere else to go. She nodded slowly, as if that made perfect sense. "And maybe it did. I saw what you wrote," I added, pulling the napkin from my jacket and setting it on the coffee table between us like it was evidence in a trial. Her eyes locked on it. She didn't reach for it, didn't deny it. "I never meant for anyone to read that," she whispered. "But you meant it." She hesitated, then nodded once. "Yes." Those 3 letters sliced through the air with more finality than anything she'd ever said to me. "I just wanted to breathe," she continued, her voice trembling. "I didn't know how to ask for space without making you feel like I was abandoning you. So instead, I stayed. I stayed and gave pieces of myself away where I thought no one would notice." I leaned forward, elbows on knees. "And did it help? Giving pieces of yourself to someone like him?" "No," she said without hesitation. "It made everything worse." I wanted to believe that, but I wasn't sure I could. "Not anymore." "You should have told me," I said, "even if it destroyed me. You owed me that much." She wiped her face with her sleeve. "I know. Then why didn't you?" "Because I didn't want to be the one who gave up first." That hit harder than I expected. Because in that single sentence, I realized the tragic symmetry of our marriage. I had been holding on out of loyalty. She had been holding on out of guilt. We weren't building something together anymore. We were standing guard over the ruins, too afraid to admit it had already collapsed. "I don't think I ever stopped loving you," she said after a long pause. "But you stopped needing me," I replied. "And that's worse." Silence settled again, but this time it felt heavier. I could feel it filling the spaces between us, the weight of years unspoken. "I met him tonight," I finally said. She closed her eyes. "He said you came to him," I continued. "Not for the bills." "After." She didn't deny it. "Instead," she whispered, "I was looking for control. In a world where everything was spiraling, I wanted to feel like I still had choices." I stared at her, heart hollow. "And was that what last night was? A choice?" She finally looked at me then, really looked at me, and I saw it all in her eyes. The sorrow, the guilt, the exhaustion, and something else, resignation. "No," she said. "That was a consequence." I stood, not knowing if I was leaving or just trying to stop myself from collapsing. My legs were shaking. I could feel my body betraying the stoic silence I'd tried so hard to maintain. "I don't know how to forgive this," I said. "I don't even know if I should." "I'm not asking for forgiveness," she whispered. "I just needed you to know I never stopped trying, even when it looked like I did." I picked up the napkin again and held it tight in my hand. "Then why do I feel like you left me years ago, and I was just too blind to notice?" She didn't answer. Because she couldn't. I didn't leave that night. I thought I would. I really did. I even stood in the hallway with my coat on, hand gripping the doorknob, heart thudding in my chest like it was trying to escape ahead of me. But something stopped me. It wasn't forgiveness, not yet, and it definitely wasn't clarity. It was something else. Something quieter. A kind of tired peace that whispered, sit with it a little longer. You don't have to run tonight. So I stayed. We didn't speak much after that. She laid down on the couch again, and I sat on the floor with my back against the far wall, knees pulled up, eyes fixed on nothing. At some point, I must have drifted off. When I opened my eyes, the early morning light was pouring in, soft and golden, like the world had reset itself without permission. Tessa was still asleep, her arm draped over her eyes to block the sun. She looked peaceful, vulnerable, not like a villain, not like someone who set out to hurt me, just human. And maybe that was the hardest part to reconcile, that people don't always betray you because they stop loving you. Sometimes, they do it because they don't know how to love themselves anymore. And sometimes, we love them so hard we forget to ask if they're still with us, or just holding on out of habit. I got up, made coffee, and sat at the table like I used to back when life was simpler and mornings weren't heavy. She woke a few minutes later and joined me in silence, both of us nursing mugs like a truce had been declared through the steam. I want to start over, she finally said. I looked at her. With me? She nodded, slowly. Only if you want to. Only if we're building something new. No more pretending. No more guilt. Just two people trying again. I didn't answer right away. I needed to make sure it wasn't pity driving me, or fear of starting from zero. I searched my heart, and what I found wasn't anger anymore. It wasn't shame or blame or even betrayal. It was exhaustion, and a flicker of hope. I reached into my pocket, pulled out the napkin one last time, and unfolded it on the table. We both looked at it like a gravestone, a tiny remnant of who we were when we didn't know how to speak truthfully. Then I reached across the table, took her hand, and said, let's give it one more try. But this time, we both breathed. Tears welled in her eyes. Not dramatic, not explosive, just quiet relief. We didn't promise forever. We didn't pretend it would be easy, but we agreed on one thing. If we were going to rebuild, it had to be with bare hands and open eyes. No more secrets. No more borrowed strength. Just us. As we are. As we're becoming. And that, somehow, felt like the beginning of something real.